Writers, I wanted to share some thoughts on the next paper that you're working on, Essay 4, which is an argumentative paper. Some of you have expressed a little bit of confusion or uncertainty as to how to move forward, so I wanted to um, give you some clarity if hopefully I can. Um, So here's the assignment, the prompt, and the important details. I think a good place to start is to first try to find an article, a text that we've looked at that you found that you had a strong opinion on, or that just stirred up some interest. So we've looked at a lot of different controversial topics. We've read a lot of different texts. I'm going to use one example. One example is on page 410, there's a text written by Amy Chua titled Why Chinese Mothers Are Superior. I'm somewhat of a new parent myself, so I'm kind of still learning the ropes. And this was all about parenting. And some of these ideas, I think, are pretty hard for especially Westerners to swallow. And I took issue with some of her ideas, but it definitely caused me to reflect and think about um, things like discipline and goals and just that balance between um, giving a child space and and so on. So I could easily write a paper on maybe titled "Why Chinese Mothers Are Not Superior," and again, this is just an example, but it's a starting off point. I think that might help you if you just think of a piece that you were interested in. So, and then from that, take a stand on a debatable topic. So it's a little bit longer than the other papers. It's 1,200 words, not 900. I am asking you to quote from at least 3 different sources. One of the sources can be the text from Patterns that you might be referring to. And the other 2 should be professional sources from a database. All right, I've put together this Halloween themed Prezi on elements of argument. This is meant to help you with structure. We haven't talked a whole lot about the structure of an argumentative paper, so here we go. And there's different structures that you might use. One is a Rogerian argument. Another is a Toulmin, which is the one I'm going to encourage you to use. So way back in high school, you probably um, were given really strict requirements on how you might structure a paper, but not so in a college writing course. You have a little bit of more freedom to decide how you want to structure your paper. With that said, your paper does need to have structure. So these are kind of major elements that I want to encourage you to use. Isn't that fun looking? All right. The best arguments have a logical appeal, an emotional appeal, and an ethical appeal. Essentially, what that means is um, if you want to write a great argument, you need to have all 3. So a logical appeal is someone who is quoting from experts, quoting studies, statistics, giving hard-nosed, just direct evidence. An emotional appeal, so you're able to use language in such a way where you're able to tap into people's emotions, and people aren't all logic, they have emotions as well, so you might do that by using descriptive language. And an ethical appeal, and what that essentially means is that you demonstrate in your writing that you are someone who could be trusted, that you're a professional. And so you do that by, avoiding things like spelling errors, being able to cite MLA style correctly, and quote from experts. All those elements show that you are a serious scholar and you're ethical and the reader can trust you. Okay, so here are the general elements I want to discuss. Uh, Introduction, claim, reasons, assumptions, qualifiers, evidence, counterarguments, refutation, and conclusion. Uh, of course, you need to begin your paper with an introduction. I always like introductions where the writer makes a personal connection. So think about that in your intro, making maybe a personal life connection, and then in your intro, you should also give your claim, reasons, and even talk about some assumptions. So let's look at that. A claim. So I'm going to just illustrate what a claim is by giving you a hypothetical example. Parents should provide sex education at home and encourage additional education in schools and community centers. So that is a clear, debatable, and controversial claim. Of course, you need to back up your claim with reasons, and this is just one reason. More than 1 million teenagers get pregnant every year, almost all unintentionally. And I'm going to suggest that you shoot for at least 4 reasons. And reasons are actually really great topic sentences in argumentative papers. So you might begin a body paragraph by giving a reason and then expanding, supporting it with a quote, commentary, and so forth. But you definitely need reasons to support your claim. All right, and these are some other important elements. In your intro or early in your paper, you might talk about assumptions that people have um, that relate to your topic that you're discussing. So one assumption um, in my hypothetical example is that understanding sex helps prevent unwanted pregnancy and that teenagers are not ready to become parents. So you might discuss some assumptions that people have early on in your paper. I think it's a good idea to have qualifiers that um, enables you to limit the scope and narrow your claim. So here's an example. The sex education provided should take into account the culture and faith of families involved. So I'm aware that some people are not going to be okay with sending their son or daughter to school because it conflicts with their culture or faith. So I make that qualifier in my paper. Of course, I want to have lots of evidence in my argumentative paper. That's just essential. So here's one example. Studies in Sweden, the Netherlands, France, and Canada demonstrate that extensive sex education results in reduced numbers of teen pregnancy. So this is just a quick example. I don't have a citation here to back that up. It's meant just to be an example, but you need to give evidence. And also, you need to provide, you need to talk about counter arguments. So you need to point out objections that people might have to your claim. So one counter argument would be that young people should learn about sex education only at home. Some people might have that objection. So you don't want to ignore objections that people have to your argument. I think in the end that'll just work against you because you'll look like you're ignoring the obvious. But you always follow up a counter argument with refutation. So here's my refutation. Statistics show that young people would only benefit if they receive sex education at home and in a school setting. And just some final thoughts to end on. I want to encourage you to always be fair and balanced and quote from professional sources. And there is an example paper that I really like the structure of. It's on page 179 in the Everyday Writer.